This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
There we go. Rabbi Glatstein, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie, for the opportunity to share some Divrei Torah with you. We're on the brink of Parsha HaChodesh and Rosh Chodesh Nissan. Very interestingly, we always think of Rosh Hashanah as the beginning of the year, and actually we don't paskin that way. The Gemara brings the machlokes Rabbi Glatstein and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua is of the opinion, B'Nisan Nivra Ha'olam. And the Ran writes in many places, we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. So basically, tonight is New Year's Eve, so to speak. And that would account for the abundance of mashke on the table. And but it's very important to prepare ourselves for the beginning of the new year, because the new year really, the whole year is dependent on the beginning. In fact, there's an amazing phenomenon when it comes to Chodesh Nissan, that the first 12 days of Nissan, each day encapsulates a month. So the first day of Nissan corresponds to Chodesh Nissan. The second day of Nissan corresponds to Chodesh Iyar. The third day of Nissan corresponds to Chodesh Sivan. And there were great tzaddikim that they could feel in the particular day of Nissan what will happen in the month that corresponds to that. So in the seventh day of Nissan, you can know exactly what's going to be in the seventh month of the year in Chodesh Tishrei. But I want to share with you a very important question this evening. We know that the night of the Seder is a very unique night. Even painters have tried to capture the beauty, the grandeur, the majesty of the night of the Seder. And we perform many, many mitzvos the night of the Seder. Exactly how many mitzvos do we perform the night of the Seder? The most oft repeated pasuk in the Haggadah, we repeat it time and again and again and again. V'higadeta lebincha bayomahu leimar ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeisim mitzrayim. All the Daled Banim, they cite that pasuk. Yachol me'rosh chodesh tamulam bayom hazeh. And in Ram Gamliel Hayoimer Pesach Matzah Umara, we constantly go back to the pasuk V'higadeta lebincha bayomahu leimar ba'avur zeh. Actually, I saw in the Haggadah of Reb Shimon Schwab that this pasuk encapsulates the formula of Haggadah Shal Pesach. V'higadeta lebincha manishtana. Bayoim ahu yachal me'rosh chodesh. Lamar to say, you got to say the whole story. Mitchilo ivdei avodah zara hayu avoseno. Ba'avur zeh Ram Gamliel hayoimer Asa Hashem li b'chol dar v'dar chayiv adam l'rasas atzma kiluyat B'tseisi Yisrael mi'mitzrayim halel. The whole Haggadah is alluded to in these 6 words: V'higadeta lebincha v'yemahu lemer ba'avur zeh. How many mitzvos do we perform the night of the Seder? The Avudraham, Rav David Avudraham of Spain, he says we perform 12 mitzvos the night of the Seder. Ba'avur zeh, zeh is gematria 12. What are the 12 mitzvos that we perform the night of the Seder? 4 cups of wine, charoises, karpas, Netilas Yadayim in the beginning of the Suda, Netilas Yadayim towards the end of the Haggadah, hamoitzi, matzah, maror, and kairich. These are the 12 mitzvos we do the night of the Seder. Comes the Chida, you know I always have to quote the Chida. Gaon Uzeinu Maran, Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He asks that the Avudraham left out the most important mitzvah. What's the most important mitzvah the night of the Seder? V'higadeta lebincha. Here he is, V'higadeta lebincha, v'yemahu leimar ba'avur zeh, and he tells us the 12 mitzvahs of zeh. He forgot the mitzvah, V'higadeta lebincha. Says the Chida, no, Avudraham is only counting mitzvos masios, action mitzvos. Speaking is not action. You know, al pi halacha, talk is not ma'aseh. Talk is machshava. So therefore he's only counting mitzvos masios. He's not counting talking. So now we have to ask ourselves, tally up all the mitzvahs we do the night of the Seder. Ma'aseh v'diburim. How many mitzvahs do we do the night of the Seder? So, Reb Shlomo Brevda was a great Talmud Chacham. He wrote many works explaining the Chidushim of the Vilna Gaon. He writes that he heard from a Rebbe named Reb Yosef Shloimeh, who was a Rebbe in the city of Mir, who heard from Reb Chanan Wasserman, who had a tradition from the Vilna Gaon, that the night of the Seder we perform 64 mitzvahs. You count it up. Karpas, Natila, Matzah, 4 kaisais, manishtana. You count up everything, berachas hamazon. You add everything up, you get 64 mitzvahs. So here it is. You have a guy. He came into the night of the Seder. He's in the red. He came in roiv avonot, and by the end of the Seder, he's tipped the scales. It's an amazing thing. No other night of the year do we perform so many mitzvos. In fact, no other night of this do we even do 5 mitzvos. The night of Sukkot, so we do 1 mitzvah, we sit in the sukkah. What other night of the year do you do a mitzvah? Since it's Erev Pesach, I have to tell you a few good jokes about Erev Pesach. There's this guy, he doesn't know how to help out his wife. He doesn't know how to cook, he doesn't know how to clean, he can't do anything. So she tells him, do me a favor, just get out of my hair. Just leave the house, stay out of the way, and come back when the day is over. Okay, I don't need you to help, just get out of here. So the guy doesn't know what to do with himself. So he leaves the house. Where's he going to go? The base medrash, he doesn't know what to do over there. So he goes to the bakery, he buys himself a Danish, he buys himself a coffee, he goes to the base medrash, he holds the sefer, he's holding it upside down, right? So he doesn't even know what to do with it. After 2 hours of doing nothing, he waddles back into the house. She says, I told you, you don't have to do anything, you just have to stay out of my hair, well, why are you back? He says, the whole day I have to help you. Can't, too much. So anyway, we do 64 mitzvos the night of the Seder, and the question is, why do we do so many mitzvos the night of the Seder? Enters the Radvaz, Rav David ben Zimra. Rav David ben Zimra was a great sage. He was born in 1480. 1492, he's 12 years old. He's one of the Gerushe Sfarad. He's exiled from Spain, and he comes to Tzfat, and then to Yerushalayim, and then he was the rabbi in Cairo for 40 years. He wrote more than 2,500 tshuvot. He had 2 very distinguished talmidim. Number 1, Rav Betzalel Ashkenazi, the Baal Shita Mekubetzet, and the other Rav Yitzchak Luria, the Arizal. He was the Rebbe of the Arizal. Now, this is a very interesting one. The Rambam made a number of takanos. One interesting takana was the Rambam observed that in his times, during Chazarat Hashatz, people did not pay attention to Chazarat Hashatz. Even though they didn't have phones, they weren't attentive to Chazarat Hashatz. So the Rambam says, you're not paying attention? The Rambam was mevatel Chazarat Hashatz. He nullified it. The Arizal says Chazarat Hashatz is the most important part of the whole tefillah. It's the most powerful part of the tefillah. Because the silent Shemona Esrei is not so powerful. So we're afraid the angels will instigate, so we have to say it quietly. Chazarat Hashatz, we have no fear, so we say it out loud. That's why Chazal tell us, if a person sees that he's davening, it's not helping, the Gemara says, in Ra'isa Adam, shehispalel, v'loy nene, yachzor v'yispalel, shenemar, kavei el Hashem, chazak v'yam etzibecha, v'kavei el Hashem. The Vilna Gaon says that's referring to Chazarat Hashatz. If you see the silent Shemona Esrei is not working, make sure you have kavanah by Chazarat Hashatz. So the Rambam was mavatel Chazarat Hashatz. The Radvaz brought it back. The Radvaz was the one who reinstated Chazarat Hashatz, and the Radvaz asks the following amazing question in Tshuva 977, if you want to look it up. He says, of all the Yisurim in the Torah, the one that we are most machmir with is Chametz. So you have a guy, you have a lady, she's cooking chicken soup. A nice Ashkenazi chicken soup. And a worker is walking by, and he just went to McDonald's, and at Burger King, he just picked up pig chicken soup. And he is fixing a light bulb, and some of the pig chicken soup spills into the Ashkenazi chicken soup. What do you do with the chicken soup? Es Gesundheit. You eat it. Why? Because how much spilled in already? A little morsel. We say batel b'shishim. It's batel on the 60th. Is it better not to drink it? It's better to drink it. Al pi Kabbalah, it's better to drink it. You're metaher the nitzotzot. Why not? It's permitted to drink it. So you have a little chicken, a little pig, schmaltz falls into the chicken soup, you drink the chicken soup. What's the halacha if on Pesach you make this big Moroccan soup and a little tiny crumb spills into a vat of soup, and the vat of soup is the size of a swimming pool? What do you do with the soup?
Garbage.
Toss it. You can't, because Chametz is not even batel be'elef. Why? Why is Chametz worse than pig? I'll give you a very interesting practical halacha. You're at work, and let's say it's a public eating area. So you're eating your salami sandwich, and there's a guy on the other side eating a pig sandwich. Could you eat a kosher lunch while somebody is eating treif right across from you? Yes or no? On the same table, on the same tablecloth. Yes or no? Mutar l'chadchila. No problem. What are we worried about? You're gonna take his pig, you know not to eat it. What are you worried about? A piece of pig is gonna fly into your sandwich? You're allowed to eat it. It's batel b'shishim. Next case. I'm eating salami sandwich. Ignore the woodpecker in the room, okay? You're eating salami sandwich. The guy across from you is eating egg and cheese. Are you allowed to eat meat on the same table someone's eating milk? Can't do it. Can't do it. Why? Because, but if it flies into your food, it will be batel b'shishim. We're afraid you may take some of his food and eat it because it's kosher food, so you might take some of it. By pig, we're not worried. By kosher milchiks, we're worried. Next case. It's Pesach. You're in Great Adventures. You made the bad decision to take your family to Great Adventures. And you're sitting on one side of the table, you're eating matzah and cream cheese. You made the bad decision to pack that for lunch, right? And a guy on the other side of the table, he's eating a piece of bread. The table is 100 miles long. Can you eat matzah while he eats chametz down the table? Asur. Why? The wind may come, may blow a crumb from his sandwich into your food, and chametz b'Pesach is not even batel be'elef. Says Radvaz, why are we so gung-ho against chametz? What's this assault against chametz? Why is it so terrible? Moreover, let's say you buy a new house, and you know the guy before you didn't eat kosher. Before you move in, do you have to take a candle and get down on your hands and knees and search the radiator for a Burger King, for a KFC under the couch? You don't have to do bedikat treif, bedikat chelev, bedikat dam. So what's this deal with chametz? What do we have against chametz? Yesterday it was kosher, it was badatz hechsher. Why are we so gung-ho against chametz? And the Radvaz, he cannot give an answer. He says, well, maybe chametz is isur karet. He says there are a lot of foods that are isur kares. Chelev is isur kares. Dam. The Radvaz says, I have no choice but to answer this question al pi drush. And that is, the Gemara tells us that there were various Amoraim that when they would finish their Shmona Esrei, they would offer a tefillah. And the Gemara says there was a man by the name of Rav Alexandri. And when Rav Alexandri would finish his Shmona Esrei, he would say the following tefillah. Riboin ha'olamim, Master of the universe. Goloi v'yadua lefanecha. You know quite well. Sheritzoineinu la'asais ritzoincha. It is our will to do your will. You know, God, we want to spend all our time limud Torah, to daven with pure kavanah, to give tzedakah, to do chesed. You know that's our will. So what's the problem? So why don't we do it? The Gemara says there are two impediments. Se'or shebe'isa, the yeast in the dough, v'shibud malchiot, and the fact that we're in a Gentile society. So the fact that we're in a Gentile society is very obvious. You're coming home, you're minding your own business, you see this big ad on the bus for some ta'ava, and you get all confused, and it shifts your whole perspective, and you, instead of wanting to go to the Beit Midrash, you want Olam Hazeh. That's where we live. We live in such a society. We're subject to Shibud Malchiot, to the influences of the Gentiles. But what does it mean, Se'or Shebe'isa? What's the yeast in the dough? How does the yeast in the dough stop us from serving Hashem? So one simple way is, the guy wakes up in the morning, he planned on learning for an hour before he goes to work. He eats this big donut. There's a lot of yeast in it. After 5 minutes after eating the donut, he becomes so drunk with sugar, he can't even keep his head up. He's in a comatose state, and he can't even learn because he had sa'ar shabe'isa. That's one pshat in the Gemara. The bread, the carbs, the sugar, it makes you like on a different planet. But that's not what the Gemara means. What does it mean, sa'ar shabe'isa? The Gemara tells us sa'ar shabe'isa is the yetzer hara. Rashi says the yetzer hara inflames your heart, makes you arrogant. And when a person's arrogant, they want money, kavod, ta'ava, selfishness. All the averot come from the yetzer hara, sa'ar shabe'isa. The yetzer hara is the biggest enemy we have in this world. You know the story, the Chavot Havavot brings the story that a guy just he came back from fighting in the Ukraine, or wherever he came from, and then he meets the sage, and the sage says, okay, you came back from the big war, you came back from the war, now you've returned to the big war. So the guy said, what are you talking about? I was just on the battlefield. What's the big war? He says, the small war is the battlefield. The big war is the yetzer hara. The biggest enemy that we have in this world is yetzer hara. Not your mother-in-law. Not your boss. The biggest enemy. The biggest soneh. The biggest oyev. It's not your, don't say it. It's the yetzer hara. From the moment you get up, the yetzer hara wants to spoil your get up. He wants to spoil your walk to shul. He wants to spoil your tefillah. He wants to spoil your ben adam lachaveiro. Every interaction, thought, word, in the yetzer hara wants to destroy. The yetzer hara is the biggest enemy. And therefore, says Radvaz, yeast, chametz is the yetzer hara. So as bad as pig is, and chelev, and dam, and chadash, all of these things are okay, but they're not the embodiment of the yetzer hara. The yetzer hara is the biggest enemy you have in this world, and therefore we have to go on an all-out campaign against the yetzer hara. You need to take out your candle and look in the radiator for every little minute particle of yetzer hara. When you're doing bedikat chametz, what do you think God wants you to do? To find little crumbs? The point is, the crumbs represent the yetzer hara in your personality. The gava, the kinna, the redifat mamon, kavod, all of these things are yetzer hara. When you're cleaning out your house for chametz, you have to think, where is the chametz? Where is the yetzer hara in my personality? We go out in an all-out assault. It's not even batel b'mashu. And if you find it, you got to burn it, you got to destroy it, throw it into the yam. There are no kulot when it comes to chametz. The yetzer hara is the most insidious thing we have. In fact, Chida writes, how many names does the yetzer hara have? 7 names. The yetzer hara has 7 names. Arel, Tameh, Tzifoni, Michshol. The 7 names of the yetzer hara correspond to the 7 chumrot of chametz. You have to search for it. You have to burn it. It's not even batel b'mashu. All the 7 chumrot of chametz. That means the yetzer hara has 7 different tactics how he gets us to sin, and these are represented by the 7 chumrot of chametz. Good answer. That's why yetzer hara. That's why chametz is so chamor. Here's the $1 million question. If chametz is so chamor, because it represents yetzer hara, and that's why it's worse than pig, and it's worse than forbidden fats, and git hanasheh, and it's even worse than kitniot, and it's even worse than, no. It's worse than any other ma'achalim, yeah? Then why in the world are we eating chametz the whole year? It's so terrible, it's the worst thing in the world. You gotta burn it. If you find a cheeseburger, you don't have to burn it. So why do you have to burn chametz? Yetzer hara. So the whole year, Jews eat more chametz than any other nation in the world. Challah, hamantashen, pizza, Chinese food. These are the 4 main Jewish food groups. We're eating chametz, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Oh, yetzer hara, yetzer hara. Yes, what are we doing? Eating it the whole year. So I want to share with you an amazing idea. This idea originates in the Arizal, as explained by Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, who's a student of the Vilna Gaon. And that is, Mitzrayim was like the incubation and womb of the Jewish people. And Yetziat Mitzrayim was the birth of the Jewish people. Now, why was Mitzrayim selected to be the womb? Well, what is Mitzrayim called? Ervat ha'aretz. It's the lowest place on earth. It's zirmas susim zirmasam. They're like horses. They're like donkeys. It's a dark, dingy place. Well, the womb is that. That's the environment of the rechem. It's ervat haaretz. It's a dark, dingy place, but that's the perfect place for the baby to develop. For Klal Yisrael to develop in a rechem, God specifically orchestrated that we go to the lowest spot on earth, Mitzrayim. Now, we know that pregnancy has 3 trimesters. Now, trimester number 1, even the mother-in-law doesn't know that the lady's pregnant yet, right? Nobody could tell. She can't tell. Nobody could tell. Maybe the woman doesn't feel well, but nobody else really knows what's going on. So Klal Yisrael comes down to Mitzrayim. It didn't look like we were in Galus. We were successful. We were being honored. Yosef HaTzadik was the Melech. We had Goshen. It did not look like it was a very painful pregnancy. And then all of a sudden, Miriam was born. And from the birth of Miriam for 86 years, things got difficult for the Jewish people. Things became bitter. You know that really we were supposed to be in Egypt for 430 years. We were only there in bitter labor for 86 years, which is 1/5 of how much time we should have been there. That's what it means, V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. That's why we drink arba kosot. Kosot is 86. 86 times 5 is 430. We got out 486 periods early. Each kos takes us out of one period of 86 years. Anyway, that's a discussion for a different time. The second trimester began from the birth of Miriam, and then things got a little uncomfortable for the Jewish people. You know, in month 4, the woman is uncomfortable, it's hard to walk, it's hard to get out of bed, she has back pain, she doesn't feel well. That's the second trimester of the Jewish people. The third trimester was at the very end, when Paro said, I'm not even providing you with straw anymore. You're going to collect your own straw and you're going to make your own bricks. And things were so bitter, and they took our babies and they put them into the cement, and they were slaughtering us, and it was a Holocaust. And we thought we would be in Egypt forever and ever and ever. Now, the inexperienced mother thinks that the heavier she gets, and the more painful the pregnancy is, the longer it's going to last, it will never end. But the experienced mother knows that the more painful it is and the more uncomfortable it is, the sooner the finish line. And it's the same thing with the Jewish people. God made things more bitter for us to pack in a condensed amount of time to bring the Geula faster. And then all of a sudden, the Jewish people are born. And they were born the night of Makat Bechorot. Do you know what we're going to say in the Haggadah? Bo. You want to sit over here? No? Okay. I don't think so. Okay. The night of Makat Bechorot, God says, Ve'avarti b'yeretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh ani v'lo malach. V'yikesi kol b'chor Mitzrayim ani v'lo saraf. U'v'chol elhei Mitzrayim aseh shvatim ani Hashem. Ani. Right? Remember that paragraph in the Haggadah? We say ani about 50 times. God did it. Nobody else did it. Why did God have to do it? Every good boss delegates. Why couldn't God say, the angel? Why did God have to do it himself? The answer is, what is Yetziat Mitzrayim? It's the birth of the Jewish people. What does the Gemara say in the beginning of Masechta Tainis? There are 3 keys that God maintains sole possession of. The key of Tchiyat HaMeitim, the resurrection of the dead. The key of Parnasah. And the key of childbirth. So since childbirth, God maintains sole possession of that key. God's the only one who could allow somebody to be fertile, for a woman to give birth. God had to take us out of Egypt because that was our labor and delivery, and only God could do that. What was the first makkah? Dam. Why? Obviously. Ein pesichat harachem below dam, the Gemara says. That's the beginning of the childbirth. The beginning of childbirth, ein pesichat harachem below dam. Now, sorry if this is going to get a little graphic. It says by Makat Bechorot, V'haisat sa'aka b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, asher kamoyu loy niyasa v'chamoyu loy soisif. There was a scream, a geshrai in Mitzrayim, the likes of which there never was. Why do they have to scream so loud? Why is it important for us to know that this was the loudest scream in history? The answer is, who screams louder than anybody? A woman in childbirth. And imagine if she's giving birth to triplets. It's going to be a nice scream. And imagine if she's giving birth to 6 tuplets. And imagine if a mother gives birth to a nation of 600,000 Jews. Can you imagine such a geshrai, such a scream? That's why the Torah says, V'haisat sa'aka gedoyla b'chol eretz Mitzrayim asher kamoyu loy niyasa v'chamoyu loy soisef. Now here's the deal. When a baby is born, the moment of birth is the most important moment of the baby's life. The moment the baby is born, there's certain vital activities you have to perform for the baby. You got to cut the umbilical cord. You have to suction out the lungs. You have to wash out the eyes. The Gemara in Shabbos Daf Kuf Chav Tes enumerates 7 things that if you don't do for the baby will die. Are you allowed to be Mechalel Shabbat to do these activities? Of course you are, because the entire future of the child is dependent on it. Now once the child is a year old, 7 years old, 10 years old, you don't have to wash out his eyes every day. Imagine a kid comes to school at 11 a.m. Where were you, kid? My mommy was washing out my eyes. We're past that. That's only for a newborn. But when a baby is born, the beginning is the most critical moment of life. You could even desecrate the Shabbos to perform these activities. Therefore, the night of the Seder is the night we're born. There's certain activities that have to be performed. There are much more things we got to do the night of the Seder than any other night of the year because it's our beginning. We have to do Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, the Seder of operations, the list of activities. It's like the night of the Seder, the nurses run in and they have this checklist of 64 things that you got to do because if you want to be spiritually vital for the entire year, you got to take care of these activities. And here's the deal with Chametz. The Gemara says in the end of Masechta Yuma that the Anshe Knesses Hagadola, they prayed to abolish the desire for idolatry, and God listened to them. So people didn't want to worship idols anymore. So they figured once they're at it, let's abolish the yetzer hara for ta'ava. Well, the Anshe Knesset Hagadola figured once we're at it, let's eradicate yetzer hara entirely. So the Gemara says they tried it, and it was a disaster. The world stopped functioning. People didn't have children. Chickens stopped laying eggs. And the Gemara said, from there, Anshe Knesset Hagadola saw yetzer hara is necessary for the world to operate. Without yetzer hara, nothing would ever get done. Yeah, of course, we think everybody does things l'shem shamayim. Without kavod, anything happens in a Beit HaKnesset, anything happens in a shul, anything happens anywhere. Of course, you need a little yetzer hara mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. So the rest of the year, you could eat your pizza and your Chinese food and your yetzer hara. A little yetzer hara is necessary. You can't live without the yetzer hara. But here's the mashal. Your kid's 5 years old. You give him some supper to eat. It falls on the floor. What do? 5 second rule. Take it off the 20 seconds. It depends on the house, right? You take it off the floor. You say the floors are clean. I wash it off. It's clean. Nothing's in. You're going to wake up tomorrow morning even though you ate the food that fell on the floor. But what if, heaven forbid, the baby bottle fell on the floor? Call in the septic team. You have to wash it under boiling water. You have to sanitize it because heaven forbid you can't give a newborn baby who doesn't have developed immunity something that is not pristine, something that's not sanitary. So there's always a difference between a baby, a child, and somebody more further developed. The rest of the year, we eat chametz without a problem. We know how to deal with yetzer hara. We've been there before. We do it in moderation. We're able to barasi Torah tavlin. We know how to harness and control the yetzer hara. But the night of the Seder, that's the night of our birth. We're a newborn baby. Every morsel of food has to be completely purified from any semblance and vestige of yetzer hara. You can't have any yetzer hara the night of Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's the night of the Leidah. That's the night that we're born. We could add a very interesting chidush. The Arizal tells us that the Yom Tov of Pesach is a compound word. Pesach. You ever hear this? The mouth that speaks. Pesach. The mouth that speaks. Because when we were in Mitzrayim, our mouths were in Galut. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu could not talk. Paro, pera, sagar alehem hamedaber. Their mouths were locked up. We were freed by pi hachirot, the mouth of freedom. Look at Masechta Pesachim. What's the first sugya of Masechta Pesachim? Don't say anything inappropriate, unseemly, unbecoming. There's a blot and a half of Gemara not to say tamei, say einenu tahar. What's that doing in Pesachim? It's a whole Gemara. The Gemara says there was one guy who said tamei and one guy said lo tahar, and the guy who said tamei, he didn't have good lineage. Blot of Gemara about this. What's it doing in Masechta Pesachim? That's the Yom Tov of Pesach, the liberation of the freedom of speech. That's why we purify our speech. Sipur, Yetziat Mitzrayim, B'chol Hamar B'Lesaper B'Yetziat Mitzrayim Reza Meshubach. Now, why all of a sudden the night of the Seder are our mouths open? It should be very beautiful now. The Gemara says in Masechta Nida, what is the embryo like b'mei imo? Einav sagarim, piv sasum, v'kivan shenolad niftach hasasum. We know at birth, the mouth that was sealed shut opens at birth. Same thing in Mitzrayim, we were in the utero. We were in the rechem. Our mouths were sealed shut. Sagar aleim hamedaber. We had to go to pi hachirot, get free from pera, from paro. And therefore we liberate our freedom of speech the night of the Seder, b'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Ready? Here's the clincher. Chametz and matzah. They're the exact same letters. They both have a mem. Matzah, mem. Chametz has a mem. Matzah has a tzadi. Chametz has a tzadi. The only difference between chametz and matzah is chametz is a ches and matzah is a hey. What's the difference between ches and a hey? The little opening. That's the opening of the birth of the Jewish people. We were born through the opening from chametz to matzah. You ever wonder, why is chametz so chamor? Why is it so chamor? So the guy ate a pretzel. Who cares? It's kosher. There are 30 rabbis been watching it for 3 years. It's a kosher pretzel. The rabbi blessed it. Ashkenazi rabbi, Sephardi rabbi, Hasidic rabbi, Rabbi Vadia, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, they both blessed the pretzel. But you can't eat it on. Because if you're a chametz, the hole is closed, there's no birth of the Jewish people, and we're stuck in Mitzrayim. But now we have the mitzvah of matzah, and the door opens wide, and now we can learn Torah from great Rabbanim like Rav Saban, Shlita, and that's the zechut, and the zechut of being marbel esaper b'yetzias Mitzrayim, and the zechut of being zahir in all the mitzvot of Leil Seder, the night of the Leidah of the Jewish people. So this gives us the spiritual fortitude to be successful as Jews throughout the entire year. And once we have the matzah and Pesach, the rest of the year we have the maturity to have a little yetzer hara, and we know how to deal with it. So I want to wish everybody a chag kosher v'sameach, a very wonderful Yom Tov. We look forward, Bezrat Hashem, to be shechenim over the Yom Tov, and everyone should have bracha v'atzlacha in their mishpachot, simchas anachas, adbias gal tzedek. We should all be zoicha, kimei tzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim, arenu niflaot. Chag kosher v'sameach, a good Yom Tov. Thank you very much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.